Captain Lorne Vega slammed his fists against the controls of the Sol Runner. The ship wasn't responding, and the alarms were a deafening wail in his ears. Outside the viewport, the planet loomed larger with each passing second. Jungle, vast, green, and glowing with an otherworldly light that sent a shiver down his spine. This wasn't on any map. No chart. Nothing in the records. Just a big fat blank in the galaxy. He barked into the comms, "Zara, give me something. Engines. Shields. I don't care what but make this bird fly." The voice of Zara, his engineer, crackled through. "We've got nothing, Lorne. Systems fried. We're going down hard." "Perfect," Lorne muttered as he gritted his teeth. The ship's thrusters sputtered like a dying animal gasping for its last breath. He didn't have time for panic. Not now. The jungle swallowed them whole. Branches and vines shattered against the hull. The impact threw him forward, smashing his head into the console. For a second, the world blurred and darkened, and then there was silence, a heavy silence that felt alive. He unbuckled himself, staggering to his feet. Smoke filled the cockpit. Lights flickered weakly. The Sol Runner was barely holding together. "Everyone alive back there," he shouted as he stumbled to the corridor. Cade the medic appeared first. His face pale but determined. "I'll live." "Zara's working on the engines. Riggs is checking the hull." "Good," Lorne said, shaking his head to clear the haze. "We need to get off this planet before it decides to eat us." The airlock hissed open and Lorne stepped out first. The jungle was nothing like he expected. It glowed. The plants pulsed with a faint bioluminescent light, casting an eerie blue-green hue over everything. The air was heavy, sweet, almost intoxicating. "This place," Zara said behind him, her voice barely a whisper. "It's alive." Lorne scanned the horizon, his hand instinctively going to the blaster at his hip. He didn't like how quiet it was. Too quiet. Then it came. The sound. A hum, faint at first but growing louder, melodic, haunting. It was beautiful in a way that made his chest tighten, and his instincts scream. "What is that?" Cade muttered, his voice trembling. Before Lorne could answer, they emerged. Women, if you could call them that. Their skin shimmered like liquid silver. Their eyes glowed faintly like twin moons in the dark. And their movements. Fluid. Hypnotic. Like they were gliding rather than walking. The lead figure stepped forward. Tall. Graceful. Her hair flowed like golden light cascading down her back. She smiled, and it was a smile that promised everything and nothing all at once. Her voice was like music. Smooth. Seductive. Dangerous. "Welcome, travelers," she said, and Lorne felt his throat tighten. "You are fortunate to have landed here." The way she moved. It was unnatural. It was magnetic. Lorne wanted to take a step back, but his feet felt rooted to the ground. She didn't walk like normal people did. Her steps were deliberate. Perfect. She glided toward him as though the air itself bent to her will. "You must be tired from your journey," she said, her voice soft and lilting. "Come. Rest. We will take care of you." Lorne forced himself to speak. His voice came out rough. "Thanks for the offer, but we're fine. Just need to fix the ship and we'll be out of your way." Her smile didn't falter, but something in her glowing eyes shifted. Amusement, maybe, or something darker. "Your ship will not leave." "Not yet." Behind him, Zara whispered, "Captain, I don't like this." "Yeah, no kidding," Lorne muttered under his breath. His hand hovered near his blaster, but he didn't draw it. Not yet. He needed more answers. "Who are you? What is this place?" The woman tilted her head, studying him like he was some fascinating creature she'd stumbled upon. "I am Sirenia. And this is Eros 4, a sanctuary, a haven." "A haven for what exactly?" Lorne pressed his voice sharper now. Her smile widened just a fraction. "For connection. For unity." The clearing seemed to pulse with life as Sirenia stood before them. Her glowing eyes fixed on Lorne. The hum that filled the air wasn't just sound anymore. It was a presence. Pressing down on him like invisible hands, Lorne gritted his teeth. His blaster steady in his grip. "I don't care what this place has chosen," Lorne growled, stepping back. "We're not staying." Sirenia's expression didn't change, but her golden hair shimmered, catching the faint bioluminescence of the jungle. "You misunderstand. Captain, this is not a choice. The energy of this planet flows through you now. You are a part of it." "That's cute," Zara muttered behind him. Her voice edged with fear. "But we don't have time for metaphysical nonsense. Captain, we need to move." "Agreed," Lorne said. his voice steady even as the weight of the hum grew heavier. "Cade, let's go." But Cade didn't move. He stood beside Sirenia, his face serene, his eyes glowing faintly like hers. "Captain? You don't understand. This place, it's not dangerous. It's peaceful. It's perfect. Get away from her." "Cade," Lorne snapped, his grip tightening on his blaster. "Now." Sirenia raised a hand, her energy ribbons flaring slightly. The hum deepened, vibrating through Lorne's chest. "You're fighting the inevitable, Captain. This planet has chosen you for a reason. Stop resisting." Lorne's heart pounded as his head swam. The air felt thicker now, the sweet scent of the jungle filling his lungs with every breath. His thoughts wavered, slipping through his grasp like water. "I can't," Riggs stammered, his voice trembling. "I can't think straight." "Captain." Lorne turned sharply to see Riggs sinking to his knees, his face pale. The navigator's hands trembled as he clutched his head. Zara rushed to his side, her knife drawn as she glared at Sirenia. "What the hell are you doing to him?" Zara demanded, her voice shaking but firm. Sirenia stepped closer, her gaze calm. "I am doing nothing." The energy of this place speaks for itself. Some hear its call more clearly than others. "Yeah? Well, I'm not hearing it." Zara spat. Standing between Sirenia and Riggs, Lorne steadied himself, forcing his thoughts to clear. He met Sirenia's gaze, his voice sharp and commanding. "Enough. Whatever you're doing, stop it, now." Her smile softened, but the glow in her eyes remained unyielding. "I am merely offering you what you already desire, Captain. Connection, belonging, fulfillment. You need only accept." Before Lorne could respond, another hum filled the air. Louder this time. It wasn't just a sound. It was a vibration. It pressed against his chest, against his mind, like an invisible force pulling him forward. Sirenia stepped closer, her glowing eyes locking onto his. "You feel it, don't you, Captain? The energy of this place. The bond. It calls to you." "Yeah, I feel something," Lorne said, his jaw tightening. "Doesn't mean I trust it." Her laughter was soft and melodic, and it sent a shiver down his spine. "Trust is not required. Only acceptance." Cade took a step forward, his face slack, his eyes unfocused. "This place, it's beautiful." "Stay back," Lorne snapped, but it was too late. Cade moved toward Sirenia as if drawn by an invisible thread. Sirenia reached out her hand, brushing it lightly against Cade's cheek. He let out a soft sigh, his body relaxing completely. When he turned back to the group, his eyes glowed faintly like hers. Captain Cade said, his voice calm. "You should listen to her." Lorne's hand tightened around his blaster. "Yeah, not happening." Sirenia's gaze shifted back to him and her smile sharpened. "You cannot resist forever, Captain. This planet has chosen you." The clearing fell silent, save for the soft hum of the jungle and the faint crackle of fire from the damaged Sol runner. Lorne felt his pulse hammering in his ears as Sirenia stepped closer. She was impossibly beautiful, an aura of power and grace that defied reason. But there was something else beneath the surface, something darker. "What are you?" Lorne asked, his voice low and steady. Sirenia tilted her head, the glowing ribbons around her flickering faintly. "I'm a guardian of this planet, a vessel for its energy, a guide for those who find themselves lost. And what happens to those who don't want your guidance?" Zara demanded, her knife still clenched in her hand. "They stay," Sirenia said simply, her voice calm. "And they become one with Eros 4. Lorne's stomach tightened. "What does that mean?" "One with the planet?" Sirenia's smile returned, faint and enigmatic. "This planet thrives on connection, Captain. It amplifies what is already within you, your desires, your fears, your truths. Those who resist are reshaped." Reshaped. The word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. Lorne's grip on his blaster tightened, his instincts screaming at him to act. "Cade," he said, his voice sharp. "We're leaving. Now." But Cade didn't respond. He stood beside Sirenia, his glowing eyes distant, as if he were somewhere far away. Lorne cursed under his breath, his mind racing. Sirenia stepped closer, her gaze fixed on him. "You cannot take him. He belongs to Eros 4 now." "The hell he does," Lorne snapped, raising his blaster. "I don't care what kind of energy tricks you're pulling. He's coming with us." Her expression didn't change, But the air around her seemed to ripple, charged with unseen power. You think you can fight this? Captain, you think your weapon will save you? I think it's worth a shot, Lorne said, his voice cold. Before he could pull the trigger, the hum deepened, vibrating through the ground like a pulse. The jungle came alive, vines twisting and writhing as if responding to Serenya's will. Lorne stumbled back, his blaster aimed at the shifting foliage. Captain, Zara shouted, dragging Riggs to his feet. We need to move. Lorne didn't hesitate. Run! The jungle exploded into chaos as Lorne and his crew bolted toward the Sol Runner. The glowing plants seemed to reach for them, their bioluminescent tendrils twisting and snapping like living traps. The hum of the jungle grew louder, pounding in Lorne's chest like a drumbeat. Behind them, Serenya's voice echoed, soft and melodic but laced with power. You cannot run from Eros 4. Captain, you are already part of it. Keep moving, Lorne shouted, shoving branches and vines out of his path. The ship was their only chance. If they could get it running, they might have a shot at escaping this nightmare. Zara stumbled beside him, Riggs leaning heavily on her shoulder. The ship's a wreck. Captain, even if we get to it, I don't know if it'll fly. It'll fly, Lorne growled, his jaw clenched. It has to. They burst into the clearing where the Sol Runner sat smoldering, its hull battered but intact. Lorne sprinted up the ramp, shouting over his shoulder. Zara, get to the engine room. Riggs, get on comms.
Cade, he stopped short.
Realizing Cade hadn't followed them, his stomach twisted as he turned back toward the jungle. Cade stood at the edge of the clearing, his glowing eyes fixed on Serenya as she approached. Cade, Lorne shouted, his voice raw. Get over here now. Cade didn't move. Serenya's hand brushed his shoulder, and he turned to her, his expression serene. I belong here. Captain, you should stay too. You'll understand. Damn it. Cade, Lorne growled, his fists tightening. You don't belong to anyone. Sirenya met his gaze, her glowing eyes unyielding. You cannot save him. Captain, you cannot save yourself. Lorne raised his blaster, his voice cold and steady. Watch me. Lorne's blaster was steady, the hum of the jungle pounding in his ears like war drums. Sirenya didn't flinch. Her golden hair shimmered in the faint bioluminescent glow, and her glowing eyes burned with something ancient and unyielding. Cade stood beside her, his expression calm, his body still. He wasn't Cade anymore. Not really. You're not taking him, Lorne said, his voice hard as steel. I don't care what this place is or what it wants. He's leaving with us. Sirenya tilted her head, her smile faint and maddeningly calm. You do not understand. Captain, this is not a choice you can make. Cade belongs to Eros 4 now, as will you. Lorne's finger hovered over the trigger. I've had enough of this planet telling me what I will or won't do. Before he could fire, the ground beneath him trembled. The jungle erupted into motion, vines twisting and snapping toward him like living snakes. Lorne dove to the side, rolling across the damp ground as the tendrils slammed into the spot where he'd just been standing. Captain! Zara's voice rang out from the Sol Runner. She was on the ramp, waving frantically. The ship's barely holding together. But I've got the engines firing. We need to go. Now. Lorne scrambled to his feet, blasting a tendril that lunged toward him. The energy from the shot scorched the vine, and it recoiled with a screech. Not without Cade, he shouted, his voice raw. Sirenya raised a hand, and the jungle seemed to pause. The vines writhed, but they didn't strike. Her glowing gaze locked onto Lorne, and she stepped forward, her presence overwhelming. You cannot fight this. Captain, Eros 4 does not take. It gives. It shows you what you truly are. I know what I am, Lorne growled, his blaster aimed at her heart. And I'm not yours. Her faint smile widened. Not yet. The jungle roared back to life, and Lorne sprinted toward the ship. Cade, he shouted, desperation lacing his voice. Get your ass in gear.
Cade turned his head,
his glowing eyes flickering faintly. For a moment, Lorne thought he saw hesitation, a crack in the serene mask. But Serenya's hand rested on his shoulder, and whatever fight was left in him vanished. The jungle was alive with fury as Lorne reached the Sol Runner. Vines lashed at the ship, slamming into the hull with enough force to rattle the ramp beneath his boots. Zara stood at the controls, her face pale and determined. Engines are at 40%. We're not flying far. We're flying enough, Lorne said, panting as he climbed into the cockpit. Keep her warm. I'm going back for Cade. Zara grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with disbelief. Are you out of your mind? You can't fight that thing. You saw what it did to him. I'm not leaving him here, Lorne said, his voice low and firm. He pulled his arm free and turned back toward the jungle. The vines hissed and writhed, but he pushed forward, his blaster cutting a path through the chaos. Sirens stood at the edge of the clearing, her glowing gaze unwavering. Cade was beside her, still and silent. Lorne raised his blaster, his chest heaving. Let him go. Sirens tilted her head, her golden hair glinting in the faint light. You are determined. I admire that, but it will not save you.
I don't need saving,
Lorne said, his voice cold. And neither does he. He fired, the energy blast searing through the air. Sirens raised her hand, and the shot dissipated into a burst of light before it could reach her. The jungle roared in response, vines surging toward Lorne like a tidal wave. Captain. Cade's voice broke through the chaos. It was faint, but it was there. He stumbled forward, his glowing eyes flickering. Help me. Lorne didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward Cade, blasting vines as they lunged toward him. Sirens' calm facade cracked, her expression sharpening into something cold and dangerous. You cannot take him. He is mine. Not today, Lorne growled, grabbing Cade's arm and hauling him toward the ship. The jungle screamed in fury, but Lorne didn't stop. He didn't look back. He ran. The Sol Runner groaned as Lorne and Cade stumbled aboard. Zara was already in the pilot's seat, her hands flying across the controls.
Engines are at 50%.
It's now or never. Go, Lorne said, collapsing into the co-pilot's seat. Get us out of here. The ship shuddered as it lifted off the ground, the engines roaring in protest. Outside, the jungle writhed in fury, vines lashing at the hull and scraping against the viewport. Sirens stood in the clearing, her golden eyes locked on the ship. She didn't move. She didn't need to. The jungle moved for her. Come on. Baby, Zara muttered under her breath as the ship struggled to climb. Hold together. The vines reached higher, twisting around the landing gear and pulling the ship back toward the ground. Lorne gritted his teeth, his hands gripping the controls. We're not dying here. Punch it. Zara slammed the throttle forward, and the engines roared to life. The Sol Runner lurched upward, breaking free of the vines and shooting into the sky. The jungle fell away beneath them, the bioluminescent glow fading into darkness. Lorne leaned back in his seat, his chest heaving. We made it. Barely, Zara said, her voice shaky. She glanced over her shoulder at Cade, who sat slumped in his seat, his eyes dim but no longer glowing. What about him? He'll be fine, Lorne said, though he wasn't entirely sure. He turned to Cade, his voice softening. You with us? Buddy? Cade nodded weakly, his voice faint. Yeah, I think so. Lorne exhaled, the weight of the ordeal finally hitting him. He glanced out the viewport, where Eros 4 was now a distant speck. Let's not come back here anytime soon. The Sol Runner drifted in the quiet void of space, its engines finally silent. Lorne sat alone in the cockpit, staring at the stars. His thoughts were heavy, his body exhausted, but in the back of his mind, he could still hear it, the hum of the jungle. Faint and melodic, Sirens' voice echoed in his memory. You cannot run from Eros 4, Captain. You are already part of it. He shook his head, forcing the thought away. He had escaped. They had escaped. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that the planet wasn't done with him yet, and somehow, neither was she.